Hey YouTube, this is my 1995 F150, and not only does it need a wash, its passenger side window won't go up and down. We're going to fix that today. While conventional wisdom is that when you're showing somebody how to fix something, you start at the beginning and video through the end. Well, in this case, we're going to start at the end and work our way to the beginning. You'll see how to reassemble the door, and from that point I figure you'll be able to take it apart and fix it yourself. And as you can see, I've taken off the inner door cover, and now we're going to move to the electric motor that is part of the window regulator system. So the problem with my truck was that the window would go down, but it would struggle coming back up. If I grabbed a hold of, a part of the window and pulled it up while I was pressing the button to make the window go up, it could do the job and would fully close the window. But the next time that I lowered it, it would get stuck and could not move. And the problem, you might think, would be a bad motor or something wrong with the mechanism. I thought maybe there was a broken arm or a tooth missing on a gear. But what it turns out the problem was an actual safety mechanism that keeps kids' small fingers from being severely injured if you were to close the window on them and so forth. So let's take a look at how that works. So what you're seeing here is the inside of the window regulator motor drive system. This part here is the electric motor, and it connects to the power in the door by this electrical connector. This part is like a dust cover that was on here, like so. So there's only one screw that holds this in place, and maybe to save on fasteners, Ford crimped the cover in this spot I'm pointing to right here, and then also on this side right here. And to remove that, I used a pin drift, a punch. I went at it with a screwdriver and ball peen hammer and so on until I was able to bend the metal back enough to be able to lift the cover off. Because again, this was there was only one small screw holding it in place. So you may wonder, what the heck am I looking at here? Well, let's have a zoom in on this. So this material that looks like something you might find at the bottom of your garbage disposal is actually the remains of a safety mechanism. I'm going to have to clean this out, but what these things were to begin with were soft, rubbery pieces that fit into that white circular mechanism. And the ones I got here were from Amazon. They cost only about $3. They're made by Dorman, and they call them window regulator gear plugs. So I'm going to dump out and maybe vacuum out all these broken bits, and then we'll show you how it goes together next. So with my truck being as old as it is, these internal rubbery parts aged and got brittle. These pieces are actually, here's like one of the little bits, they're actually really tough. Like, I can't dig my fingernail into them. Nothing got jammed in my truck window when it was trying to close, but these these little part of the safety mechanisms, these gear plugs got hard and brittle, and then at some point crumbled. And there was enough material there that the window would still operate in one direction. So now it turns out there's a small clip holding this gear in place. So I've got the pliers in there to be able to remove it with luck. There we go. There. Now there's some form of grease in here. There's also a rubber O-ring here that goes around the perimeter here of the gear. Here's the gear itself, and down inside here you can see the worm gear that drives this white plastic gear. And I'm just taking a quick look to see that I don't see any disrupted teeth. I don't see any broken teeth on this gear. There's this yellow stuff is just some grease, and there's a little grease on the backside. So it's not a ton of grease needed. I'm going to put some all-purpose or some bearing grease on there just so it has a little bit extra. I just happen to have this stuff here, some wheel bearing grease. Just going to take a daub and get some here down on this worm gear. A little on that shaft. So you can see how this works. The worm drive gear from the motor rotates this plastic piece. This part here with the tooth gear on it inserts in the plastic piece, but it spins almost freely, not completely. But when these gear plugs are in place, they fit in the space between this gear here and in the corners. And when they come under stress from something being stuck in the window, those gears shred and prevent too much force from being applied to, you know, your kid's fingers or whatever is blocking the window. Well, we all know that when you get overzealous with the persuasion tool, hitting plastic gears, and now I had to reorder because I hit this with the hammer a little too hard, and voila, I broke the gear. So it cost about $11. This is in April of 2022. I ordered on Amazon and got this Dorman set, which includes the gear and a new set of gear plugs. So we'll see how this is packaged. Still an economical way to fix the window. So here's the gear and more plugs. So I'm just going to match this up and see that it actually is the same as the gear I broke. Looks about the same diameter and same pitch on the teeth. It's a little bit different in that this original one has this little curved slope right here, and whereas this one has just a slight rise. Hopefully that won't make any difference. The teeth on the new gear are also taller in this direction. So let's see if it fits. Yeah, it meshes with the worm gear properly. I'm going to see if these new gear plugs are the same size as the ones that came with the replacement gear. Well, they look to be about the same. Got 0.49 on the new one inches, and the other one I bought, same. Well, there's a small dimple on the back side of this thing. Come on, focus. And so I've decided I'm going to take a drywall screw and drive it part way in there, and then see if I can't put that into the cordless drill. So I sunk it in there, only maybe, having trouble with this, maybe one thread of the drywall screw into the gear plug. Alright, well, let's see what happens with the sandpaper. I'm just going to hold the sandpaper on the edge of the bench. This is 150 grit sandpaper. So just as a refresher, the package said these plugs were 595 thousandths in diameter, and spinning them in the drill. I took them down to about 47 thousandths each, and you can see on this one I even kind of took the leading edge down to where right here it's even got a little bit of curvature to it. So let's see if this works. So I put the edge that I narrowed pointing upward, because that's the first part that the gear here is going to encounter. So here goes nothing. I'm still using this small awl just to position those plugs and to try to help make them stay in the corner where they belong. Oh, there we go. Right on. So here you can see what it's supposed to look like when the gear plugs are in position. So now we got to put the small washer and retaining clip back on here. There we go. Okay. So when I removed the original clip, it became stretched. It got too distorted, so I found a replacement. I think it was a 5/16 ring, and this was a really good bargain at Harbor Freight. I got this whole assortment kit. I don't remember how much it was. It might have been $8 or something. But it sure beats paying, you know, $1 a piece or whatever the heck they charge at the automotive store. Alright, so that's back on. So I didn't lose the screw for this cover piece. I just put it back in its original opening. This O-ring looks like it was intended to retain grease. I'm going to add a little bit more. So there's some for this gear. So this gear I'm greasing is the one that connects to the quarter gear that's in the door. And this cover has sort of a thin gasket material in it, but it didn't tear or anything when I took it apart. I just got to clear a little bit of this debris from those original gear plugs that shredded. And there's definitely was some grease here where this cover plate touches the O-ring that's down here. So that's going to go on like, let's see, like that. You can see how that's puckered open here. This will get pulled tight when it's back in the door. So we're back here at the vehicle, and what you're looking at here is the hole where the radio's speaker was in the door. And I've got the motor that raises and lowers the windows. It was positioned in here in this orientation, but you end up having to take the speaker out to access the motor. Now, one thing I found very strange that Ford did, I'm panning down to where the mounting holes are for the motor. So in this orientation, one of the connectors is right here. The fastener for this hole was accessible right there, but the upper and lower fasteners, there was no way to get to them. So I had to drill a hole right here and right here in order to get a socket, or in this case I used a nut driver to be able to access the bolts that hold this in place. So with all the holes knocked in this door, for some reason Ford did not knock holes to make those bolts accessible. They did, however, make a little dent, a little dimple centered right where you would need to drill those holes. There's a similar dimple down here, right there. And so I used a step drill. I'm holding the step drill bit here, and you can see that if you have a step drill, that dimple that they made is just perfect for letting your step drill get started. Again, I have no idea why they didn't just knock these holes, knowing that someday you might need to do maintenance. If you don't have a step drill, you can just start with a small drill and work your way up. So let's see, the size hole I drilled was about, let's see, right about to there. About ½ inch. Yeah, it was about a ½ inch hole. And so I just used the nut driver, and it's a 5/16 on this particular truck. Alright, so I got that in there. I didn't tighten it down all the way. Here's the next one. Maybe I'll do this one here that's a little more exposed. It's a little bit easier. I have to start that with my fingers. Didn't tighten that one all the way either. Now the tougher one is going to be getting this last one lined up. And apparently even more difficult is going to be figuring out how it found its way out of my parts tray. Well, let's pause while I figure out just what the heck I did with that screw. So you missed out on some thrilling footage of me repeatedly dropping fasteners down inside the door and having to shove my arm in the speaker hole and reach down and pick them up. But apart from that, I've got all three of the bolts in place, and it is really important to only put them in loosely until you've got all three of them located. This one might be better able to get to with a wrench instead of this nut driver, but I'm just winging it here. I think I'm going to tighten this one first. And I'm doing that just because it's at an odd angle for the nut driver to reach it. There we go. Okay. So I can see down inside the door that now that these three bolts are in place, that cover that goes over the gearbox is firmly held in place and flat down, and there are no gaps between the cover and the body of the gearbox. So now, before I go any further, I'm going to test the window. Which means finding the other half of this that comes from the motor. This one here is for the speaker. Here we go. Okay. And this goes in one way. It's got this little bump here, and that bump lines up with this clip that holds it together. And this is like a little rain guard. So we want that to point down. Alright, so now we've got to put the keys in the ignition so we can have power to the door window. So one thing that you need to do on this type of operation, before you start taking the door completely apart, it's important that the window is in the up position, and you need to secure it somehow so that it remains in the up position. And then what I did is I just took a piece of baling wire here and slipped it down here between the glass, and I wrapped it around this lever arm that raises and lowers the window, and then just came through this hole and gave it a little twist. Another option, people sometimes will put like multiple pieces of duct tape stuck to this inside of the glass up over the door and then stick it on the exterior of the glass. You can put several pieces, or you can find a way to jam a block of wood or something such that this part of the mechanism is held in place and keeps the window all the way up. And besides, if you're working on your your car and you get interrupted, and you know, you could have rainy weather. You want to be able to have the window stay up. So what I'm going to do now is just untwist this and then carefully do so to make sure that the mechanism is engaged. Because I can't see from here looking in the door if that quarter gear, if its teeth are engaged with the window regulator motor. Let's see, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, they're engaged. Okay, so now, what can I see here? Here's the control for the window. I should be able to lower the window. Yeah, I'm not going all the way down because there's stuff in the way here, but let's try the up. There we go. Here, I can back that out. You'll see that replacing those gear plugs actually did work. So I didn't need to replace the motor, didn't need to buy a whole new mechanism for inside. If I hadn't broken that plastic gear, this would have been a $4 in parts. So now it's just a matter of getting the rest put back together in terms of the cover and the speaker. One thing that is important for keeping water out of your vehicle, and here's just a little courtesy light that comes on when you open the door. This plastic sheet here, so, you know, take a rag and get rid of a lot of the dust. It's going to be, which would otherwise make it difficult for the tape to stick to the door. This little courtesy light, it goes into the door trim panel, and to remove it you have to twist it a little clockwise or counterclockwise and it comes out. I was a bit surprised on this truck. There was no plastic protecting the back side of the speaker. On other car doors I've taken apart, there's sometimes like a plastic indentation in this skin to receive the speaker. Sometimes it's even made out of rigid plastic, and it prevents water from ever getting on the back side of the speaker. So there it is. You can see it's got some sound insulation. There, I got it. It's just about a quarter turn. I don't know if I got that on camera, but I tried. And then we got to pass the controls for the window up through this hole. You can hear them. I hit the lock button. So now, let's see. Hopefully can see the plugs that I'm talking about, these plastic plugs that are sticking out like points. I'm going to have to set the camera down, but what I'm going to do is work the door handle through that opening, and then also, you know, line up those plastic plugs, and then when they're in the hole, you just give them a firm push and it'll click into place. The other thing is the door lock. You've got to lift the whole panel up and over this area here. It's going to hook into where my fingers are. So there's a little bit of finagling that takes place when you're putting the door skin back on. Pulled on the door handle as though I was opening the door, and that made it easier. And now I'm just going to fiddle and try to get it up over the door lock. Okay. There we go. So I got this up over the door lock, over the edge of the door. I'm going to push it down. Let go of the handle, and now I'm looking at these locations of these plugs, because if you do it and if you're not lined up, you'll bend the plug over and break it, and then you'll have to go buy yourself a pack. 3 here. There. Now this little piece of duct tape is sticking out too far. Won't be covered by the trim. So I'm just peeling that back so it'll be hidden. There we go. So down there. Now remember, there are more of those plugs on this side of the door. Oh, and of course, I forgot to put the speaker in. So, that wasn't too swift. Well, you got to see how I removed the door again in the first place. So here's the speaker. So I got to reconnect that wire. It just snaps into place, and it can only go one way, one direction. There you go. That was easy. So these are T20 torque screws. I'm doing these by hand because with the power tool, I want to get them started by hand so I don't end up stripping things out. So yeah, there were only 4 screws holding this speaker in place, even though there were 5 potential holes in the speaker itself. Don't go crazy. These don't have to be incredibly tight. Being gentle with this impact drive. There, very good, very good. Oh boy, this camera is getting wet. Well, I gotta get this door on and be able so I can close the door, and then we'll call it quits for today. Working, pulling the door handle up, working it through the slot. And while it's up, get it up over the lock mechanism here. There, okay. Trim down. Line up the holes. So the rest of this is just reattaching Phillips screws. The longest one goes through this deep section of the door here. There we go. Okay, that's good. And now I'm going to pop a couple of these the other ones in down on the bottom part of the door. And you can see like I said, down at the bottom here, I had lost some of the original screws, so I used some cut off construction screws to make them short enough. That's all it takes. And there's just one Phillips head screw that holds it in. It's got a little bit of a conical piece here they've added, but makes it sit down nice in the door lock and window control. Be gentle. So there are several along the bottom of the door. Almost. There we go. Yeah, so down the bottom, we got 1, 2, 3, a fourth one over here by this vent. And underneath here is where the water drains out of the door. Right there. Those are the drains I was talking about, where water that happens to get in the door drains out. There's another one here around the middle of the door. If these ever get clogged, your door will start filling up with water, and what a mess. Alright, all for today. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not sure how many vehicles use gear plugs in their window regulator system. I know vehicles possibly into the mid-2000s that had gear-driven window regulators may still have been using the gear plugs. More modern vehicles with computer systems now have anti-pinch features that will even reverse the window if it senses that you got your hand caught in there. If you own an older vehicle with a gear-driven type system, there's a good possibility you'll have gear plugs in there that could be at fault. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.